Hey everybody, it's another episode of Circle Up and Get Real here first so that I can create the audio for the podcast, Circle Up and Get Real. So today I just wanted to talk about that phrase, keep it real, because it's a real thing. I mean, that's a phrase people say. And I knew that, but I hadn't ever really taken a look at it. So we're going to talk today about what it really means to keep it real and to determine some ways to do that. Maybe there's a good case to be made for staying fake. I don't know. Let's talk about it. So if you're here live or later, please, if you're here live, put some comments in if you want to, and I'll address them and we'll have a conversation about it. By the way, I have been looking at YouTube a lot lately. I got YouTube TV a while ago, and I am really loving some of the podcasts that are run through YouTube. And so I'm going to try to, I'll make this commitment right now. I will look into ways to do that with this podcast to make it more appealing and to see if there's a way that I can build some followers. I had no idea how that works. And I've been watching mostly WNBA podcasts, but I'm seeing when I watch them and I do subscribe, or I have hit the button that says subscribe, I can see how they're growing their followers and how they're doing that. And I just had no idea how to do that. So I will be looking into that as well. So with that said, let's have a conversation. I see that there are 3 people. Thank you, the 3 people. Let's talk about keeping it real. I'll do the countdown and then we'll go. 3, 2, 1. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Circle Up and Get Real. And today I want to talk about what that means. What does it actually mean to keep it real? As I've been making the assumption that everybody knows what that means in the context of this podcast, it occurs to me that maybe people don't. And when I created this platform back in 2020, it was due to a conversation I was having with Chris Angel about the world at the time, 2020 during COVID. And we kept coming back to just be real about it. Just be whatever that meant to us in the conversation. And then the acronym was born from that conversation. What would it mean if we were being real and we were breaking it down? And so the acronym was born then, radical, which doesn't mean wild and crazy out there. It means actually getting back to the root. Radish, root. So radical, energized. We're going to be aware of how we use our energy, how we maintain our energy, what we bring and what we take. A is authentic. Ways to dip your toe into what it really means to know yourself well enough to be able to show that. So know it, show it. And then the L is learning focused, which means just being always open to the possibility that there's something more to learn. That's what the real acronym, how it plays out, REAL. And now that I'm thinking about it more, I'm hearing people say, keep it real. Do we still use that phraseology? Hey, everybody, just keep it real. Just keeping it real. And I've heard it said in that context when somebody maybe is saying something that you don't want to hear. They're giving you feedback or advice about something that, how does that dress make me look? And you're like, just keeping it real. Looks pretty crappy. You know, it's a way to give yourself permission to say your truth. And in that way, it's a little bit funny. Just keeping it real. Just keeping it real. And what's interesting to me is how often now that I've been aware of this, I hear people saying things like, well, if I'm being honest, I would say this. And I'm thinking to myself, wouldn't you always want to be honest? Wouldn't you always want to keep it real? And that's where I've started noticing. I've just started being aware of the distinction between being real and not being real. And so I started just kind of exploring that. As you know, if you follow this at all, I always talk about wonder and ponder. I don't have a wonder ponder notebook in front of me right this minute, but I have little notebooks that say wonder ponder. And I write down things that I want to ponder later because I'll forget if something grabs my attention and then I go on to the next thing. I want to be really clear that, hey, that's something I want to ponder. And this keeping it real thing has come up a few times for me in my awareness. And so I started thinking, what does that actually mean, keep it real? And so I looked it up, and it's a thing. It's a thing that people say, keep it real. There are lots of, if you do a Google search on Keep It Real, there's a lot that comes up. How to keep it real, what does keep it real mean? And it could be slang or urban dictionary stuff, but I think for me it just means being honest, being true to yourself. And as I was thinking about that, if we've defined it that way, keep it real means being true, being honest, saying what you need to say, and I would add, because my context would be while being respectful and kind. While being respectful and kind, that's really important to me. Keep it real while being respectful and kind. Maybe I should add that to the R, radical and respectful. But anyway, being in that space of I don't want to just cut you down because you're a loser and stupid. I don't know why anybody would do that anyway. And if you're going to keep it real about what's important to you, it's pretty hard for anybody to disagree. I'm just sharing with you how it occurs to me. And what I've noticed a lot is it seems that people want desperately for other people to agree with them. And so they will make it really difficult not to, because they'll cause you to feel stupid if you don't agree. And it's that energy that I see a lot of posts being made, memes being made, where people are making a statement and saying, this is the way, not like this, but this is the way the cool kids do it. And if you're not agreeing, then you're not one of the cool kids. It almost feels like we're in junior high a lot of times. Hi, Melissa. Melissa says no one can steal my realness anymore. Yes, I'm so grateful. And Melissa's actually made her handle on Facebook be Getting Real Melissa. And there's a lot more to that you can reach out to Melissa and she'll share it with you. But in that space of once you, like you said, Melissa, once you become real or once you decide for yourself that being real is the way to be, it's really hard to go backwards. And so I can think of a lot of examples. Pinocchio is one, the real boy. I can think of the Velveteen Rabbit. Once you are real, it's when your fur's worn off and you're loved so desperately because the real you is what people know. And I think it starts with me. It definitely starts with me because I spent most of my life in relationships trying to be what the other person wanted me to be or what I thought the other person wanted me to be. And actually, this is kind of hard to admit, but not that long ago, I found that I was still doing that in business, in personal relationships. I was trying desperately to be gotten and liked and appreciated. And so I wasn't being real. I was being what I thought would get me appreciated. And boy, it's only in looking back that I can really see how often I did that and how long it took me to really step into what makes Jodee Jodee. And that's a process. That's a process that I've learned to love, even though it's difficult. I've learned to love the process of becoming, who I was created to be. And it's always been there, but I covered it up with so much stuff and stories and shoulds and all kinds of stuff. And now recognizing that and getting back to what I really know me to really be has been a process I enjoy enough to say that I will do this the rest of my life. This is something that I will continue to do the rest of my life. And I will do that with those who choose to do that. And I promise I will not force anybody to get into the space of getting real if you don't want to. I will always invite, I will never force. And that's been a conversation I've been having with one of my clients. I'm a coach and a facilitator. And we've had this conversation about making things mandatory or not make them mandatory. And I am so sure that making something mandatory is going to create resistance. And I don't want to have to deal with the resistance, especially when we're talking about things that are typically not talked about, especially in business. Things like culture, communication, leadership. Melissa says, hard to admit. Yes, Jodee, that is the hardest part. And starts to peel the layers to get real, which you are an expert at. Thank you, Melissa. Love this podcast so much. What a terrific mentor leading by example. I appreciate you, Melissa. And what's really neat when you look at sharing a message or creating a movement or doing anything It's never about the lone nut, the first person. It's about the first follower. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a 3-minute video you can look at. Just do a search on a shirtless dancing guy. Shirtless dancing guy. Put that in a search. Put that in YouTube. And you'll see this narration of a festival where one guy started dancing and he was the only one dancing. And he was a lone nut. He was by himself dancing. I'm guessing there was some alcohol involved, but I will not make that. That's not necessarily true. And he was dancing up a storm, and he was just a lone nut till the first follower came and started dancing with him. And so through the narration of this video, which is probably just an observation of a bunch of drunk people dancing on a hill, and it kind of shares a point about how a movement starts not from the first person, but from the first follower. And then the first follower invites others to join. And eventually, while you might have looked crazy if you were the one dancing by yourself, eventually, over time, you look crazy because you're the only one not. And that's how movements get started. And movements need to move. You know, there needs to be continuous movement. And that's what I love about personal growth, is there's continual movement. We're never done. We're never at the end. It's a continual process. Lifelong learning is all about continuing to, as you said, Melissa, peel the layers to get real. And I'm not going to say it's easy. It's certainly not an easy journey. In fact, it might be the hardest work you'll ever do, and not hard physical labor. I think that's where I got mixed up in my own life for a while, because I used to believe that hard physical labor was more valuable and more important and more valued than hard personal work. Because I can do a whole lot of work on myself and nobody will ever see the results, perhaps externally, because the work's being done internally. And again, it's kind of like bamboo. If you plant a bamboo seed, it'll take 5 years before the bamboo seed pops out of the ground. But eventually, that's why bamboo is such a natural resource, because it grows so fast after it pokes out of the ground. And then you can harvest it and it'll continue to grow. Kind of like our own personal journeys here to getting real. So I've been playing around with AI. Had a conversation this morning with another of my friends, and we were talking about how AI, artificial intelligence, could be looked at as a danger, and it could be scary, and it could be a bad thing. And, you know, when you look at something a certain way, you'll see it that way. We tend to look for evidence to prove that what we already believe is true, instead of opening our minds up to possibilities that we can't yet understand. So if we're going to say AI is scary and all these people are going to lose their jobs and it's really bad, and then we look for evidence from that point of view, we'll find it. And we can also look at AI as, wow, what a great tool. What an opportunity to shorten the length of time it would take to research something. Now, I would never believe absolutely everything that comes back. I do my own research to figure out if an AI, story, essay, article it has written is actually true and is written in my voice. I would change it, of course. But it certainly shortens up a lot of the research. At least it does for me. So today, in Google, I posted, what does keep it real mean? I think I just Googled keep it real. And it says, keep it real is a slang phrase that means to behave honestly and not pretend to be someone you're not. I love that. And AI version says, here are some tips for keeping it real. Now, I could have come up with these on my own. I could have had I could have done the work of journaling it and coming up with it. And I can also ask AI to just give me, what does it have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? 5 tips for getting real. And here's what came back in 2 seconds. Be vulnerable. Share your struggles and wins equally. In the course I wrote, that took me months to write, and now I've had my 6th cohort of the Real Me Intensive course. One of the things we talk about in the section on getting authentic is to own your shit and own your shine. And then we talk about what that means. Well, right here in 2 seconds, share your struggles and wins equally. Saying the same thing in a different way. Number 2, be open. Stay open without oversharing, and listen and learn about others. What a great piece of advice for keeping it real. Be open. Stay open without oversharing, and listen and learn about others. That's great advice. Yes. Third bullet point for keeping it real. Be humble. Start from a place of confident humility. What a great phrase. Confident humility. That would be a whole conversation, wouldn't it? And I'm thinking about basketball right now because I'm kind of immersed in the WNBA. And I think about confident humility in basketball. Does it exist? Is it possible for someone to have confident humility? And of course, I'm biased. I believe Caitlin Clark shows that. But there are other players who do too. It doesn't need to be all about them. They don't need their names on a billboard. Caitlin Clark isn't asking to have her picture on a billboard. She's not asking for that. She's got sponsors and an agent probably who are helping her figure that out. But I don't think she would be the one who would want her face on a billboard. The thing about that, when it's confident humility, she sees her, I'm going to say job, her opportunity, her destiny, her reason for being in the world to inspire others to have confident humility. So what I see her doing with the little girls and boys who come up and want her autograph, she's there for them because she recognizes that she was once that little girl who looked up to players like Maya Moore, who, by the way, on August 24th, they're going to retire Maya Moore's jersey at the Minnesota Lynx game where the Fever are playing, and I will be there. Yay. Just a little aside. But start from a place of confident humility. That's a really great piece of advice. Thank you, AI. The fourth one they give us for keeping it real, be a lifelong learner. Where have you heard that before? Don't try to have all the answers and challenge yourself to learn something new each week. What if that were something that we all agreed we were going to do? That's the L of the REAL acronym. Be learning focused. And then the last one they give us here is focus on what energizes you. Do activities that energize you. Well, the E of the REAL acronym is energy. So that was created, this course and this platform was created 4 years ago in 2020. And I just asked AI right now to come up with some tips for keeping it real. Looks like we've been doing that for the 4 years this has been around. We're in season 5 of this podcast. And so isn't it kind of fun when you recognize that there are some universal truths, what Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich called principles of success? There are some principles that when you hear a principle, you nod your head and go, yep, got it. That's a principle. Hard to argue with that. And what I recognize from just this little activity is when we hit on principles, they belong to the universe. They don't belong to whoever came up with the idea. And when I notice something, I used to do this differently. I'm going to be completely honest, because before I knew this as a universal principle, I would think, I had that idea. That was my idea. Somebody stole my idea. And then I'd look for evidence to prove I was right. Because that's what it means to me now after having studied the 15 commitments of conscious leadership. That's what it means to be unconscious, below the line. Closed, defensive, and committed to being right. And man, I can look back on lots of times when I was unconscious. And there are still things that cause me to go unconscious because for just a minute, I want to be right about something. I want to be right. And I notice when I do that. So then it's my job to get back to consciousness, get back to keeping it real. And the thing about that's distinct from consciousness, according to the book, 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, which is open, curious, and committed to learning. And being real, there's an A in the REAL acronym that is authenticity. Be authentic. And when I'm conscious, it doesn't really ask me to have an opinion. It doesn't really ask me to be specifically me, uniquely me necessarily. Open, curious, committed to learning. And so in the REAL acronym, there's this piece on authenticity, which has me explore what makes me me. What do I love? What foods do I love? What do I love doing? What kind of activities are important to me? We have some assessments that we do during the course, and one is the Red Thread questionnaire from Marcus Buckingham. And it just has you ask yourself, what am I doing when time just seems to fly? What are the things that I love to do? And then we can tie that back together and say, what does that mean about who I am? Who I am. Not who I need to be someday, or not who somebody else wants me to be, or how I think I should be, but who I really am. And if we can get back to that space, I say back because I think somewhere in our lives when we were younger, we probably knew that. We probably knew what was touching our hearts, what brought us joy. I mean, think about 3-year-old kids who are running in a field and they're just completely in joy. There's nothing to keep them from joy. So at some point in our lives, we knew that. It's just reminding ourselves and getting around other people who want to do this kind of work and who want to have these kinds of conversations and who want to and can't not maybe be in the space of witnessing other people's greatness. And in community, in collaboration, in spaces where we gather with others, we create movements. That's the whole idea of a movement. And if the movement is about how this is wrong and this is bad and we're going to fight against this thing, whatever this thing is, that's a movement. It moves. It moves away from what you don't want instead of toward what you do want, typically because the reason for forming the movement was in opposition to something or in anger or in frustration. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying that's a starting place, right? We can start with what we don't like and we can say, I wish things were different. And then we can say, am I willing to create a movement toward what I do want? And never forget Mother Teresa being asked, would you march in our protest against the war? And she said, no. But if you have a march for peace, I'm there. And I wonder how often we put all of our attention and energy on what we don't want, and then we get really upset when what we don't want keeps showing up. I mean, universal consciousness, that space where we can find our principles and grab them, that doesn't exist in low awareness. It only exists in higher awareness because we're going toward what we do want, not what we don't want. If you look at the difference in energy between what we don't want and what we do want, I mean, one feels heavier than the other. And if we're looking for what causes us to feel lighter, that's where we go toward the light. And in that space, it's not rocket science. It's just doing something in the space of what you do desire and who you know yourself to be deep down. Because we all know, I believe, I might be wrong about this, but I believe we're all created in light. We're created to be amazing humans. And something happens to some of us over time. I'm thinking about what happened in the United States over the weekend. And there was a 20-year-old man who thought the thing to do was to get out a gun and shoot at the presidential candidate and kill one person and wound 2 others and then kill himself. He didn't kill himself, but he was killed in the process. Does that seem like the best choice? And I think sometimes that's where we get stuck. We're so adamant about fighting against what we don't want that we forget why we even decided in the first place. I don't always know how to get there. There being higher awareness, consciousness, staying in the higher energy. And I'm learning what I don't want. I'm learning what doesn't work for me. And if I can just keep it real and do what this AI told me to do, I might keep it real and say something you don't want to hear. Because it might be like, hey, that's not working. Or, that's not working for me, maybe I would say. And I have to make a choice about things. I don't have to make you wrong for making a different choice, but I can stand for what I do believe in. And if I do that without worrying about what you think of me and what you're going to say if I don't agree with your decision, that's what I mean when I say keep it real. This is who I am. This is what it is. I'm not here to hurt anybody else. I'm not doing my life so that you know how great I am and how terrible you are. I love this piece about confident humility. I love that. I'm going to take that with me. Confident humility. I'm confident for me. You do you, everybody, you do you. But if it's not working and it's not giving you what you want and you're upset and frustrated and angry all the time, there might be another way. There might be another way. Actually, there is another way. I'm confident there is another way. I may not always know what that other way is, but there is another way. Because anger and frustration work to get us off the dime sometimes, but if that's the energy we take with us all the time, we're going to have more of what happened over the weekend. People in anger. The movement is about anger. It's not about joy. And so if the movement can be toward what we do want, there may be some hard conversations that have to be had at the beginning. This is not right for me. This is not right for me. Deep down, we know what's the right thing to do. I believe that. We know the right thing to do. The right thing to do is to not take a gun and shoot at somebody. That's not the right thing to do. No matter what, that's not the right thing to do. And that's Jodee getting real. You will disagree with me. I know you'll say, but I'm going to defend I get it. Not me. And that doesn't make me wrong. It doesn't make you right. It doesn't make you wrong, me right. No. I know for me, that would not be a choice I would make. And what I witness around me when I make certain choices is I witness opportunities to determine that, hey, that choice gave me a lot more awareness. When I made that choice, over time, that choice makes me. I love that. I think it was Jim Rohn. I can't remember who said that. You make the choice. At first you make the choice, and eventually the choice makes you. And so what kind of choices are making you? What are you noticing about yourself? Do you spend more time in joy or more time in frustration? There might be another way. There is another way. And we'll have to get to that place, Melissa, where you decide to get real. You decide to come back to social media and change your handle to Getting Real Melissa, because there's something about that you can't undo. Once you see that, you can't unsee it. Once your mind is expanded by a new thought, it can't regain its original dimensions, and that's a good thing. So thanks for getting real with me. Thanks for keeping it real with me. Thanks for being with me on these journeys where I say, I don't even know what I'm going to say half the time. It just comes out because I set a prompt for myself and then I allow. That's a fun process. And I'd like to invite you to try that. Wonder about things and ponder them. Take some time. Don't jump to conclusions as we've been so conditioned to do in this microwave world we live in. Take some time. Wonder about something and then ponder it. And then see what kind of conversation you can have with people when you're asking questions rather than making statements. I don't know, just try it. That's what it means to me to get real. See you again. Thanks, everybody.